Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished and respected professional from Rhode Island, USA, Mr. Nick Prefontaine. Nick, welcome to the show.
Ashutosh, I'm so excited that we could do this with both of our schedules, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Nick is the founder of Common Goal. He created the STEP system. STEP stands for support, trust, energy, and persistence to help others overcome setbacks and achieve their fullest potential. So, Nick, we're going to speak about the STEP system today, but before we come to that, a few questions for you. At 14, you were told you might never walk, talk, or eat independently again. And yet here I am talking to you. What was the lowest emotional moment during that period?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say there was several points. There was only one moment of doubt that I really remember, because my parents did such a good job of keeping the doctor's prognosis from me. And I'll get to that. I'll go into detail a little bit later. But
Mhm.
uh, just to answer your question, that one moment of doubt was when I was Ashutosh was when I was in the rehab hospital. And this is after I had already come out of my coma and I was in a wheelchair at the time. I was in between my therapies. And I was looking over my situation. I was at lunch in my hospital room with my mom, who was my support, and I was looking over my situation and I just couldn't figure it out.
Mm.
I can remember looking over at her and saying, Mom, am I ever going to be able to walk again?
Mhm.
And she said, Of course you are. That's what we're doing here, so you can get everything back and we can go home.
Yeah,
So this allowed me to keep taking that next step. And I would say that moment of doubt was, I always like to share it because we all have moments of doubt.
absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Let's come to the STEP system now, Nick. How did the STEP system, which I'll repeat is support, trust, energy, persistence, first begin to form in your mind?
Sure. This is something, the step system, and for context, I'll let me start at the beginning because I think it'll help
Yeah.
the listeners understand how it all came about. So
Mm.
my story really goes back to a day when I was only 14 years old.
Mm.
I was at ski club with my friends, and all my friends and I had brought our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
So as not to miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain.
Mm.
So we got to the mountain, the rest of the class went inside to get ready, and not us. We were ready to go. So we headed straight for the chairlift. And then on the ride up, we noticed that it was
Mm.
very icy because it had been raining. So people were wiping out everywhere. And the level of snowboarding that my friends and I were doing, um, that really wasn't something that phased us. That wasn't slowing us down in the least. And
Mm.
what the chairlift actually went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump in the terrain
Oh,
park.
wow. Mm.
There wasn't even a moment in my mind of thinking, oh, should I do it? Or maybe I should be careful today. I was definitely doing. I mean, right until the fact that I was already thinking about what we would do after I landed that huge trick. Maybe
Mm.
grab a burger and fries in the lodge,
Mm-hmm.
or we could head over to the other chairlift for some runs on those trails. I was just happy to be there finally. So I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And going into the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that's the last thing that I remember.
Wow.
So they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital. They couldn't because it was too windy. So they had to send in an ambulance. And out of all the paramedics in the area, there was only one who could intubate right on the spot. And I needed that to be able to breathe. And lucky for me, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. So, Ashutosh, when I'm always retelling this story, it's easy for me to remember because there are three things that I credit for being able to be here today and tell that story. The first one was the right paramedic showed up at the mountain, at the mountain to intubate me right on the spot. Second thing, although I wasn't wearing a helmet, the goggles that I had on my head, on my eyes, and on the top of my head, they were very thick with a lot of padding. So not only this is from eyewitness accounts, my friends who were there, doctors, experts, everything like that. They said that not only did the goggles brace my initial impact, but as I continued to roll down the mountain and continued to hit my head, my goggles moved mysteriously to cushion each blow between my head and the ice. And I wore some pretty big goggles with a lot of padding. So I never would have fathomed that I would need them to brace my fall.
Incredible.
And then the school had to get in touch with my parents and have them meet me at the hospital. So all they knew was that I'd been in an accident. And my dad was the one that they were able to reach first. When he called my mom, he wasn't able to get alive, so we had to leave her a message. And as soon as he hung up, he realized that the message might panic her, so he called back and deleted it. So when they both got to the hospital, they were totally shocked to see how rough of a shape I was in. My head and shoulder, where I made the initial impact, were bruised beyond comprehension.
Wow.
And the doctors had to drill a hole for a shunt to be inserted into my brain to relieve the pressure. Without it, the pressure could have gone up and I would have died.
Wow.
So I can only imagine at this point what it must have looked like to see a doctor standing over me, foot on my chest, while he was drilling the hole into my head. So after that point, I was resting in a partially induced coma in the intensive care unit, unable to communicate with anyone. So the answer to your first question, I just want to bring this back around.
No, thank you for sharing this. What an amazing journey.
Thank you. I just to give you and your listeners context. So right then, when the doctors came into my room to share progress updates on my status, my parents ushered them out of the room. So they knew that even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information. So especially in these early stages, these updates from the doctors were not very positive. They had to give them the worst case scenario. So lucky for me, my parents had that foresight. And so once out of the room, they said that I probably wouldn't be able to walk, talk, or eat on my own ever again. And even if I was able to come out of the coma, there was a good chance I don't need 24-hour care for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And my parents didn't accept this like so many patients do as a death sentence. So they took the information, thanked the doctors, and allowed me to treat it like any other situation. So I was in a coma for 3 weeks. It was, as I said, partially induced, so I really don't remember a month. And after a month, I was transported to a rehab hospital in Boston. And that's where my first memories and my journey began. So you asked me, I know this was a long answer to your question.
No, but this gives an amazing context to the STEP process. But thank you. I mean, this is amazing. So let's talk about each of the four.
I was just gonna.
Go ahead, please. My apologies.
So this is where I started to unknowingly use the STEP system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And STEP is an acronym. It stands for support. So make sure that you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. trust that once you take your first step, your next step's always going to be available to you. And this also starts by trusting that voice that you have, that we all have inside
Yeah.
of ourselves.
Mm.
So the way that I can illustrate the voice inside of yourself. So it was after I'd been transported to the rehab hospital, and I could overhear my parents talking with my team of doctors and therapists. And they were saying, all right, what do we need to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery?
Mm.
And I heard in the back of my head, you're going to run out of the hospital.
Mm.
So them running out of the hospital became our common goal.
Yeah.
And then E is energy. So maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be
Mm.
able to heal itself.
Mm.
And medication has the potential to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
So unless it was absolutely critical to my survival, my parents opted not to have me on any medicine. And then
Mm.
finally, P is persistence. So once you've taken your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. And by continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. So that's where the step system, I unknowingly use it
Yeah.
to run out of the hospital. And
Mm.
it took until over 4 years ago now, working one-on-one with my mentor, Trisha Brook, that it really came out of me. So
Mm.
it's just how I've dealt with things and
Yeah.
how I was raised. So she asked me, so you have this great story. How did you, after getting in your snowboarding accident and your parents being told you wouldn't walk, talk, or eat again, you ran out of the hospital. How did you do it?
Mm.
I said, I don't know. I just kept getting up every day and doing the best I can. And
Mm.
she kind of leaned in and goes, no, not good enough.
Mm.
How did you do it? She kept asking me to a point where I was very frustrated with her.
Mm.
And I'm just so happy that I went through this process with her because she birthed the step system with me and pulled it out of me. So
Mm.
now I'm able to help hundreds, if not thousands, all over the world to implement the step system in their lives and their situation.
Mm. Amazing. Let's talk about each of the four components. Um, and I understand support is the first step, but what does real support look like versus surface level encouragement that we tend to give to someone who's unwell or recovering?
So the support for me, I was 14 years old when
Mm.
I got into my accident. So my parents were,
Yeah.
that was my support at the time.
Yeah.
However, your support doesn't need to be family. And trust me, I hear all the time that, oh, okay, lucky for you, you have a supportive family. I don't have a supportive family, so therefore, the step system can't work for me. I think nothing could be further from the truth because um, your support can come from anywhere.
Correct.
It can come from anyone in your life that is reaching out and always seeing, hey, is there something I can do for you? Is there anything I could pick up for you at the store?
Mm.
A neighbor, a coworker, maybe even someone who's not even that friendly with you.
Mm.
However, they always come around in
Yeah.
your time of need and they want to help you. However, what we found is that they have this tunnel vision
Mm.
as to, okay, my support can only come from my family, so
Mm.
therefore I can't, no one else can help me. And I think nothing could be further from the truth. You have to be open to receiving
Yeah.
support from all areas of your life.
Correct. 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 Great response. Let's talk about trust, and while it's very important to trust the whole process and everyone around you, when you are in recovery, what does it really mean? Trusting yourself, trusting others, or trusting the process, or all of them?
I'd say D, all of the above. So the trust is, and STEP, the
Mm.
acronym support, trust, energy, and persistence, they
Mm.
all work they all work together and they all work in concert with each other. So, and you have to do one at a time, like sequentially. So, as long as you're being open to receiving the support, whether it's from family or friends or other people that just keep coming around asking if they can help you, as long as you're willing to receive that support, then you can move on to the next letter, which is trust. T for trust. And then if you have that support lined up, you can trust that once you take your first step, your next step's always going to be available to you. And that voice has reared, I don't want to say reared its head, but it's come up several times in my life. And the whole reason, Ashutosh, that I'm doing this today and doing all this speaking with you, speaking for brain injury associations and working one-on-one with individuals is because I've listened to that voice to tell me I need to be doing that. I need to be telling my story from stage and helping people, trauma victims, whether it's accident, life crisis, through their trauma first, then thrive with the rest of their lives. So that's the whole reason I'm doing this today, is because I tuned into that voice. And I would say for anyone out there that's wondering what they should do next or what they can do next, they have to get quiet and listen to that voice. And if I could just say this, we don't have time to dive into it right now, but if that's a foreign concept to anyone, getting quiet and listening to that inner voice, listening to that guidance from their self, God, the universe, whatever you may call it, you can check out one of the talks that I did for the first time in New York City in 2024. That's called My Introduction to Stillness Was a Coma. And that's a short talk, but it gives you a great introduction to meditation and how you can implement it in your life. And I think that's a great place to start.
Absolutely.
If that's a foreign concept to anyone.
Absolutely. Let me come to the E now. Most people would say motivation comes first before energy. Why do you emphasize energy?
So I think this is interesting because I think, as I said, you have to do each letter. It's not just a buffet table. You have to do each letter in the step system. But as long as you're doing support, you're lining up your support, you can trust that once you take your first step, your next step's going to be available to you. Energy, it's interesting because the times that I do, and energy has continued to evolve for me as it does for everyone. So when I was in an acute situation, my snowboarding accident, my parents wanted to get me off of the medication as soon as possible, unless it was absolutely critical to my survival. That was the focus in a traumatic acute situation. However, once I ran out of the hospital and I finished my rehab, that evolved. So that evolved to, okay, we need to work on healing the body and getting the toxins out that have been pumped into me to help keep me alive. And I started seeing a naturopath to do that. All kinds of things based on your blood type, all kinds of different therapies, foot bath, infrared sauna, colonics, acupuncture, cranial psychotherapy. I would get all of these every 2 to 3 weeks for, I would get that for, it was 3 years of doing that. And so the reason I bring that up is energy continues to evolve. You have to continue to take care of your energy, because if you're not able to show up and be fully present, I find that you're really not able to show up in the world and help the most amount of people possible, whether it's yourself first or anyone else. Because if you're less than 100%, you're not able to be present with people and give them your gift.
Well said. Well said. Nick, the fourth step is persistence. which sounds simple but is incredibly difficult. How do you persist when results are not clearly visible?
Oh, this is a fun one. I'm so happy you asked the question. So, um, uh, your results won't. Oh, the majority of the time they're not going to be visible.
Hmm.
Uh, the majority of the time they won't be visible, and really, I find that, and even myself, I found that throughout my life that if I'm too focused on the result and oh, okay, I'll try this for 6 or 12 months, and if it doesn't work, then I want to go and do something else. Um, I really feel like that's the wrong way to look at it.
Hmm.
Because as long as you are, again, back to the step system, as long as you are taking care of your energy, and so to this day, you know how I said it continues to evolve.
Hmm.
So to this day, every 5 weeks, I go to see my, I guess you would call him my, he's become a friend, but a teacher and master, Dr. Ming Wu. He's a Taoist energy healer, and he was the one that I learned how to do meditation and qigong from.
Hmm.
And I still see him once every 5 weeks to help keep my energy high,
Hmm.
so I'm able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible. Um, and I think without that, if I just got too locked into the persistence of the step system, I would find, and I've done this before in my speaking, like if I'm getting ready for a big talk, I tend to over prepare and wear
Hmm.
myself down. So
Yeah.
then my energy begins to suffer because I'm focusing too much on the
Hmm.
persistence.
Hmm. Hmm.
However, I just have to go back. I just have to go backwards and go back through the step system. So
Hmm.
as long as I'm taking care of my energy, I can do the persistence to a point where it's going to, on its own, build an unstoppable momentum. So
Hmm.
yeah, it sounds easy, but in practice, it's hard to get up every day and keep going forward. And I really find with in all types of work that I do with people, all types of coaching work,
Yeah.
the what I find is that people give up way too soon. Uh,
Hmm.
they give up way too soon after persisting for so
Correct.
long. Just, oh, okay, this doesn't work, so therefore I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to go back
Hmm.
to something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, where if they just kept going, they would get there.
Hmm. Amazing. Time for two more questions, and I want to ask you the next question on Common Goal. Uh, you're the founder of Common Goal. Tell me a little bit about Common Goal and what gap are you filling?
So I think all right, common goal, and the name of it comes from the fact that when I was in the hospital, my goal was to run out of the hospital when my parents and the therapist and the doctors had a goal for me to walk out of the hospital on my own.
Hmm.
I had the goal of running out of the hospital. So therefore it became as a team, our common goal. So
Hmm.
that's where the whole name comes from. And um, where it comes from, I mean, excuse me, how it's, how it's able to affect people and impact them is that whatever trauma they're going through, whether it's a life challenge, crisis, or accident or anything like that, the goal, the common goal, first of all, is to get through whatever it is they're going through, and
Hmm.
then once we achieve that, that's the common goal. Then it's to thrive with the rest of their lives.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And my last question for you, Nick, you're a three times best-selling author and you've been named a top motivational speaker. How has writing and speaking shaped your healing process?
Again, I love this question. This is such an interesting question because I think I actually, if I go back to when I was in school,
Hmm.
and when I was in English class, as most of us were, I hated reading. I just hated. I resented it. I was like, oh, I got to do this thing. I got to do this assignment for school. However, what I found is I actually, after I graduated from high school, I loved reading. I became more and more just enthralled with books.
Yeah.
And then that in turn led me to starting a journal, writing my journal every day. Um, and then that in turn has made me a writer. If you would have told me when I was 14, 15 years old that I would be a writer, I would have told you you were nuts. However, there are a lot of people there are a lot of people that I work with. They'll see me write out something, like whether it's a paragraph or a statement or whatever, any kind of work. They'll say, "Oh, this is like, you're a writer. You can definitely tell you're a writer," and that that has really shaped who I become. And I think in this day and age, with the advent of AI and all the things that are available and at our fingertips, I think it's a lost art. And what's amazing to me, if I can just share this, that I saw something that really resonated with me. So it said that if you produce, like, from your own brain, and from your own thoughts, how you want to help people, if you keep producing content to help people, that has the potential to spread like wildfire. AI will grab onto that and it'll spread like wildfire. But if you're using AI to create your content, AI is not going to grab onto something that AI created.
Yeah.
That's why it needs to. I think there needs to be an emphasis to come from the individual.
Yeah.
To come from your own thoughts and your own mind. So that's that's my little rant, if you
Very
will, on
interesting. Very interesting.
and then speaking, I actually won the 2005. So very shortly, 2 years after my accident, I won the Profile and Courage Award for Franciscan Children's Hospital after I ran out of the hospital. And that was, believe it or not, I was only 15 years old at the time, 15 or 16 years old at the time. That still to this day, it's one of the biggest audience that I spoke in front of. And once I get off the stage and I saw how I was able to, I was still working through several things, of course, health wise. But once I came off the stage and saw how I was able to impact and affect people, I was like, I want to be doing this. I want to be doing this for the rest of my life. This is what I want to do to help
Very
people.
interesting.
It's a great medium to help people.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. And on that note, Nick, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been for me, for my viewers and listeners. Clearly, you're a young individual who saw adversity at a very young age and who actually fought all that adversity, fought all the challenges, and in your own words, ran out of the hospital. Good luck for everything that you're doing. I'm sure I'll see much more of you as a speaker, as an author, and as you explain the STEP process to so many more people who need these kind of inputs. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.